And it's my pleasure to share a summary of the work that SFO has been doing with a dedicated team from Accenture. So not everyone knows that the city and county of San Francisco owns and operates SFO, one of the busiest airports in the United States and one of the 50 busiest in the world. In 2019, we served 58 million passengers, generated $10.6 billion in economic activity, and had 300 different employers on site supporting 46,000 jobs. 2019 was one of our busiest years, with the opening of Harvey Milk Terminal 1, the Grand Hyatt at SFO, and the new long-term parking garage, all within a few months of each other. But when the pandemic hit, flight operations decreased by over 95%. As essential infrastructure, we have remained open to enable medical workers, cargo, and supplies to get where they needed to go. This means that frontline workers have continued to come to the airport throughout the pandemic, helping to keep the airport clean and safe and ensuring passengers and cargo get safely to and from their destinations. But with the drastic decrease in air travel after the shelter-in-place order, we estimate that as much as 75% of our airline and concession workforce was furloughed. Things happened very quickly, and the airport immediately shifted focus to ensure the social and economic well-being of our private sector workforce. What we learned quickly, however, is that we needed better ways to connect. And this is what led us to apply for the Civic Bridge program. SFO has a long-standing history of addressing the safety, health, and economic well-being of the airport's private sector workforce. In addition to ensuring that our local communities have access to the numerous jobs at the airport has also spent the last couple of decades setting policies and programs to ensure that the airport's workers thrive both professionally and personally. But the pandemic really challenged us in reaching a lot of workers in a short amount of time and with a lot of different information, including our expanded work-life navigation services and general airport operational updates. So our goal with Accenture was to define and redesign the way we connect with frontline workers, both so that they can leverage all that the airport has to offer, but also so they feel more connected to the airport both during the pandemic and beyond.
So in order to provide an understanding of how communication was working in the current state, which we needed to do to be able to make sensible recommendations about where to go next, we both constructed a survey to reach over 400 of the frontline workers throughout the whole airport family. And we were then able to conduct face-to-face, although remote, but video interviews with 8 of those employees. We're also able to get some of our team members on site in the airport itself to meet people in their true environment, to understand their commentary in the context that it belongs in, and to be able to see how they really work day to day and where their information is truly coming from. And to be able to really make use of that as best we could, we also conducted research with industry experts who have the knowledge of aviation and how similar problems have been solved at other organizations. But I don't want to just tell you what all of our interview subjects told us. I'd like to show you.
At the very beginning, I just want to ask, like, how are you?
You know, I'm happy. Like, it's a great place to be. And I love what I do and I love where I'm at.
I definitely like run around a lot, just, take care of my kid, try to pay my bills just like any normal person. And I would say, I'm a solid representation of average worker.
If you want to know what's going on at SFO, where do you go?
In terms of information regarding the actual airport, we actually don't know much.
Like, we don't get communications necessarily from the city.
There's not too much information that gets delivered to us.
So I do go on the website periodically. I won't say regularly, periodically.
Yeah, but honestly, I'm not going out of my way to find out what's going on. Not if I don't know how it's going to affect me.
Ni siquiera sabía de esas ventajas porque nunca las han dejado saber. Nosotros en el trabajo nunca los han ofrecido como ayuda para cuidado de nuestros hijos o programas de ayuda para la compra de alimentos.
Some kind of connection at the airport. I would have been like, hey, do you know who, can you help me figure out who the right person is to talk to? But I don't really have that person. So it's almost like you avoid contact with anything that has to do with the airport. Coming from a third-party company than actually working as, the airport, you want to bridge that gap because you can't do everything by yourself. You're gonna have to bridge gaps. You're gonna have to build relationships.
We need to rewrite the book.
So in our survey, we were able to reach a much larger number of surveys than previous similar efforts had, in part due to the great generosity of the City and County of San Francisco in helping us to offer an incentive. So a program of gift cards for people who participated in the survey and also in the interviews. We learned through conducting the survey that referrals were a very important way that people found out about the survey itself, and a full 25% of respondents found out about the survey through other people who knew first. And it started to give us an inkling that the way that information spreads in the airport is not in fact top down, and that there's a complex web of relationships that is spreading information, and that what we needed to do was to use that flow to our advantage instead of trying to work against it. We found that most respondents reported that they wanted communications to be sent by either email or text or both. An overwhelming majority of employees preferred those methods. And so we were able to synthesize our approach into 6 fundamental principles around which the future communications plans of SFO should be structured. So to use the example that I gave earlier, that we were able to get people to participate in the survey by offering the gift cards. Number 4, incentivizing people to opt in. The incentives don't need to be that large. People want to get involved, and we're just need to give them a little nudge. We thought at the beginning of this program that we were trying to tackle the so-called digital divide, that there were workers, frontline workers, who did not have regular access to cell phones, smartphones, email, internet. And we learned that the problem was actually more subtle than that, and that access to the technology is ubiquitous, but the flow of information is often through word of mouth and informal chat groups that are organized by the employees themselves, and nothing that is being done top down. But that there are a few key information champions who act as conduits for information and who have great reach. So most information is flowing through a relatively small number of people. We need to be careful not to over communicate so that people don't become desensitized to messaging and think that these things aren't relevant and start to tune everything out. But at the same time, under communication, people just aren't getting the information in the first place. And as I mentioned before, the level of incentives that it takes to get people to participate, it doesn't take much. People are already mostly there. So, Emily?
We see our next steps as ongoing and iterative. We definitely want to develop tools and mechanisms that can operationalize all of Accenture's recommendations, their findings, their aha moments. We've looked at implementing more formalized texting mechanisms, and we've developed a smartphone app that will expand to the private sector workforce. Regardless of the tools, we know that we have to very closely monitor effectiveness and assess what is and isn't working so we can iterate and improve our strategies so we can ultimately reach our goal of all frontline workers feeling more connected and integrated with the airport. And with that, I just want to say thank you to the dedicated team. Here is a photo of all of us. A huge shout out to everyone at the Office of Civic Innovation for making this project possible, to the talented team at SFO for addressing this challenge, and an enormous gratitude to Accenture. They committed a whole baseball team to this project. We had 9 very insightful, careful, and caring Accenture team members working on this project, and we're truly grateful. Thank you so much.